What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Your Story. We're here with a crazy, energetic, awesome friend, Evan Morris from Atlanta Ceramic Coating and Paint Protection Film out in Atlanta, Georgia.
Good to be here, man.
Hey, bro. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit about your drink of choice.
Well, this is a special drink of choice. I don't partake in it much. This is actually, besides a tiny sip for a couple people, this is the first glass that was poured. But this came from the Ring brothers, and Michael Jordan made it. And it's a tequila. And it tastes like, I don't know, what does it taste like to you?
Let's try it. Let's see. That's damn good.
It's just good.
It's good. It's smooth. You know, I learned, well, not learned, but I learned a lot about tequila because I'm a whiskey drinker. So tequila you're actually supposed to enjoy kind of the same way on the rocks, sipping it.
Yeah, I do.
Not shooting it.
Yeah, it's about a mill a sip. So that'll take me about 4 hours to finish. And that's how you want to drink this one.
I think you meant like $1 million a sip.
No.
That's
Well,
honor.
thank you, Ring Brothers, if it's that much. But yeah, I know it's, they probably filtered it through like, one of Jordan's jerseys or something. That's why it tastes so good. So.
Well, give a little background on the Ring Brothers too, because I know the Ring Brothers well and have always been inspired by their cars. But you've had the opportunity to work on the car that just won Battle of the Builders and this ridiculous truck that they had built over the last couple of years for a really cool client. Yeah.
So we did I believe it all started with G-Technic doing a training up there, and just the sweetest family you'll ever meet. Just dear people, and we hit it off and got along really well, and then I ended up coming up for a David Patterson and Jason Otterness event, detail-wise. And then I think that truck was almost done at that point, and then we got to talking about it, and they needed to PPF it because as open wheel insanity as it was, they wanted to protect it. So partnered up with Expel on that to get that thing protected before seeing a pretty intense week of work, but super thankful to work on it. It was an honor, truly. And I was just honored to be, invited into the family. They treated me and my crew like family up there. So they were like, invited us to stay at their house and everything. We didn't, but it was great and awesome. They were super willing and super loving people. So yeah, and then they sent me and my brother a bottle of this stuff.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having us. Yeah. Another cool thing is to give us this obviously is not the shop that we're in right now.
Right.
And this is kind of shop dog.
Yeah.
Miss Lucy right here too. Yeah. But tell us about the your home and the place we're in.
So I'm blessed to have a lovely wife who does interior design, and so she's made this room really nice. And then you guys killed it with the lighting. Over the last, what does it take, like 7 hours to get this set up?
Yeah, I think we started about 6:30.
Yeah. So it's this is our sitting room in our home. So it's,
cool.
Cool to have you guys here.
Well, thanks for opening up your home.
Yeah, man. For sure.
So Evan, you obviously you've shared some stories with me, and we've got to know each other over the last few months. But your upbringing was definitely different than most.
Sure. Yeah.
So can you kind of give us a little insight into the story, and even starting all the way down to the health conditions that you had as a young child? Yeah. So
I was born in Texas, and then we moved to Georgia when I was younger. Probably this vicinity, Alpharetta, Roswell area. And, my dad straightened bread pans for a living, after doing construction for a while.
How do you do that?
You have a machine and a die and a press, and you go to bakeries and straighten them out. Apparently they get dented. Anyway, I almost forgot about him doing that for a while, but yeah. So interesting. My dad was always a hard worker, and definitely taught us like how to work hard. So we, I think it was when I was about 7. Yeah, when I was 7, I got a viral myocarditis virus attacked my heart, and essentially got pretty far along in the destruction of the muscle tissue and stuff, and kind of rendered my heart pretty much useless. And bouncing around a couple different hospitals, and doctors basically said, "Hey, this heart's not going to work. We got to get him a new one."
Do you notice anything up to this point?
Well, what manifested itself was a flu-like sickness, and then a lot of weakness, and I was like, to the point where I had a high fever, and I was like hallucinating. I couldn't figure out what reality was. It was real slippery.
At 7.
Yeah, yeah, and replaying it over afterwards, it was like crazy. My parents were telling me I was saying this and doing this. I'm like, man, I don't remember that. So anyway, they got me to the hospital, and it progressed pretty quickly. Ended up going from getting to Scottish Rite, and basically my mom told me I looked like was gray. Like didn't look like anything was happening as far as life goes in my body, and my heart was barely beating. And we did an ambulance ride at one point, and I actually flatlined 3 times. So a couple minutes without any blood flow in my body, and they brought me back. They actually pulled over to the side of the road and pulled out the defibrillators and got my heart back going, got me the rest of the way to the hospital, and then ended up getting life flighted to Emory. And they stuck me on a machine called ECMO, and that machine just basically oxygenates your blood and gives your heart a rest. And it doesn't have to work to oxygenate everything, which wasn't working well, so that's what I needed. It was pretty new technology in the early 90s. I think now it's pretty well used. They've kind of refined it, but I was one of the few that had been on it. And anyway, it got to the point where my heart wasn't really improving, and they put me on the heart transplant list. So I was number 1 on a heart transplant list in the U.S. for a full day, actually, so 8 hours or so. It didn't have one, so they're like, hey, we're gonna have to pull the plug. They told my parents, like, hey, this is where we are. He's had a lack of blood flow to his brain for so long during the cardiac arrest, and it's been very weak since then. He's probably got about a 1% chance of survival. We're probably not going to be able to get his cannulas out, his veins reconnected, and everything working, and him even make it. And if he does, he's probably going to be a vegetable. He'll have to relearn everything because it's basically like a reset. A lot more complicated than that, but anyway, they pull me off, get everything put back together, and my mom was a prayer warrior at that point in our youth, and she was praying hard with a lot of people from our church, and she actually saw, like, in her mind, like the veins just coming back together, and the doctors came out and they're like, I cannot believe it. These veins, literally, we had to do very little work to get them to just come back together, and like, so my jugular and everything, and I had to redo some stuff in my chest as well, and it came back together perfectly, got my heart back beating again, and just basically waited for me to wake up, and they didn't know what to expect, and woke up, and I saw my grandfather, and I just smiled at him, and they're like, okay, well, you can smile. And then over the next couple of days, I was just a goofball, and they're like, oh, thank the Lord. And
hasn't stopped since then.
Yeah, and it's been a goofball scenario ever since then, So, but I ended up seeing my doctor, who kind of orchestrated everything, in the halls. I was walking to one of my physical therapy sessions, and it was Dr. Cornish, and he's a leading children's cardiologist at the time, and he saw me walking. He's like, Evan, are you kidding me? He pulls his stethoscope off, listen to my heart. He's like, Evan, there is nothing wrong with your heart. I'm like thinking, yeah. He's like, you don't understand. He's like, your heart was garbage. We did not put a new heart in you, but you have one that works perfectly. He's like, it's a miracle. And it absolutely was. There's no medical explanation for the rejuvenation as quick as it was, and without any side effects. I took pills for maybe a month or 2 afterwards, but I've been medicine free, I guess, since then. So
were you there? Were you with it when you were basically in a coma?
Yeah. So I remember waking up a couple times, and one of the times waking up and looking at all the tubes with blood running through it, and they had to calm me down and get me back kind of sedated. But it was agony waking up, and when I was actually awake, one of my exercises, I'll never forget it, it was actually to touch the spot on a banana. And if you ever been sore from the gym, imagine that times 1,000, and every muscle in your body has so much lactic acid built up. It was just excruciating. And that was literally all I can do, and I did not want to do it. And I felt like I had the flu, and it was a rough getting back to going. And just a reset as far as like endurance and everything, just to walk across the room was really hard and stuff. But God was faithful and continued the healing out, and my heart's 100%. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever gone back and kind of looked at the research on what happened to you back 30 years ago to see if anything like that's happened since?
Yeah, I have, and I actually got to talk with one of the doctors involved. I got invited. So another extraordinary thing within that scenario, there's you'll probably see at the grocery stores, Children's Miracle Network actually paid, it was over $800,000 worth of medical bills that we were eating beans and rice at that point. But,
you're 800,000.
Yeah, they literally paid my thing. I was like their poster child that year, and I got to go to the telethon. But that actually, years later, I met another guy who's doing, it was a Children's Miracle Network, like, campaign thing, and I just randomly started talking to him because of his shirt. And ended up going to speak at something down in Florida. And I got to reconnect with some of the doctors and stuff, and it was neat to kind of see them, and they're like, "Oh, you made it!" Like all these years, because we kept in pretty close contact for the first couple, but after that, we lost touch. But yeah, it's pretty cool to kind of see the doctors again. So
pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
So after that happens, what was it like getting back into school or friends?
It was tough. I mean, there was a stack of work, and I remember my teacher, Miss Whitlock, just being the sweetest lady, and it was second grade. So yeah, it was not tremendous. A lot of learning that I missed, but it was like kind of over Christmas break. It was a month or two in the hospital, but I remember like it was kind of like just everything was so tender. Like my emotions were tender, and everything was just kind of like super sensory after getting back. But everybody was very kind, and my teacher was very gracious to get me back in there and learn what I'd missed and stuff. But yeah, just I'd say a year later I was 100% and ready to run around.
It's awesome. Be a kid again.
Yeah.
Not even again, just be a kid.
Yeah, just be a kid. Yeah.
Still living it today.
Yeah.
So after that all happens, your family kind of decided to take a new way of belief and pull you guys.
Yeah. So a year or so later, year and a half later, so my dad started looking into this new religion, and basically, it's got a couple names. I didn't even know the names of them, but they've kind of got them categorized. It was basically would be a racial look at the Bible, and they've twisted everything that was written in the Word, and then through a certain lens of racial viewpoint, and British Israelism, and like serpent seed and all that kinds of stuff. It's very easily accessible on the internet to disprove these days. But pre-internet, you listen to your plumber apparently, because I think that's what told my dad about it. But it took a dark turn in our family because we ended up started going down that path, and
this is like the 90s.
Yeah, so it'd be mid 90s. Yeah, early 90s. So it's before Al Gore had the internet. Sorry, little jab. So our family started taking a kind of a different route. So my dad sold his business, and we started prepping to go after a little bit of looking for a church or people to hang out with that believed like this. We ended up moving to the middle of nowhere in Missouri it was a compound. We got a trailer and a sawmill, goats and chickens, a couple turkeys, and we're going to be self-sufficient and cut our own wood to build our own houses and all the stuff that you plan to do. And I think it lasted about a year. It was a pretty intense stay there, and very compromising to your thinking of love and the Bible. And I remember thinking like, how can this be? I'm like not necessarily reading this in the Bible, I don't understand it, but you trust your parents and you want to follow them and honor them. And when you're young, you can't, you're not skilled at debate. So anyway, we ended up getting kicked out of the cult. I don't fully know why. It was in the middle of the night departure kind of deal. So something happened somewhere, and we ended up kind of getting down to Texas, and we left a lot of our animals, and I think we left our trailer and our sawmill, and my dad grabbed some stuff in a U-Haul and one goat, and headed back down to Texas. So that was the next stage of our life, and it was pretty rough. My parents didn't really get along during that time, and ended up getting divorced, and horrible divorce. A lot of rough stuff happened, and makes you think like you do want to shelter your kids to a certain extent. You can't just act a fool and not expect any ramifications to happen to them. But pretty rough divorce there in Texas, and then we ended up moving back to Georgia with my dad through a series of unfortunate events. Ended up going to juvenile detention, getting in fights with uncles and stuff like that. And
you did?
Yeah. So it was pretty messy time. So, yeah.
Well, Evan, I mean, you went through a lot in those first. I mean, how old were you by the time you went to juvie and we're back in Georgia?
I think 11, 12 is when we were kind of going through it.
Yeah.
I think it was in 8th grade back in Georgia.
So you basically died.
Yeah.
Then went to a compound into a cult.
Yeah.
Then got moved in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Decided to get into a fight and go into juvie all within 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was the turning point? Because I'm sure if any doctor was to go and look at that history, to be where you're at today and to be as happy as you are and as loving as you are, you got to be facing those odds again, kind of like that heart.
Yeah. So I think that the biggest change was honestly, I feel like God always protected me through all of that heartache. Through my high school years, I started finding truth, and I started like looking at the Bible and being like, hey, I think it's probably not the way that my dad's saying it is, you know? And then my dad was getting a little tired because, you know, 4 boys living with a dad, he wants to kind of move on. We were kind of burdening him. And started skipping school, ended up dropping out of high school and getting a job. And actually I had a decent job with BMW at the time. And I remember my dad got sick. He had like a tumor or something like that. And it wasn't cancerous, but it killed his work. I wanted to help him. He was building his stairs at the time. So I ended up coming back to work for him, even though we're kind of at odds a little bit. And I remember telling him that I didn't believe like him anymore. And I essentially left that belief system of what he had kind of brought us up to believe. And it was a debate every day when we went to work from then on. And during that time of finding truth, it was truth that I was finding in the Bible. And Dad, I feel like every time I read the Bible, I don't see like this outlook on life manifested. I feel like God is a God of love, and he's not a dictator of color of skin or genealogy. It says it specifically, like it's not about endless genealogy. So it put my dad and I kind of at odds, but I ended up moving away not too long after that to move to California, worked on a fishing boat.
What were you fishing for?
I was just fishing on it was Deadliest Catch was the reason I went out there. I wasn't ready. Well, yeah, it was.
The show around there?
Absolutely, yeah, it was.
It
just came out. It was like first season. I want to go do that. Yeah.
I don't know how those dudes stay alive.
Yeah, so I'm, early 20s and
you saw the $20,000 in 5 week type of deal.
This is sweet. Yeah. I was like, I got to start somewhere. I'm like, maybe I can just get a fishing job and yada yada yada. So I started real small, like in the.
That's not the Bering Sea.
No. It was pretty nice out there in Dana Point, San Clemente. So I worked out of Dana Wharf. We just went on a pleasure boat thing, and like people was like, fishing boat, really cool, like crabbing. I'm like, no, it was warm. It was nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, the red tide rolled in, and I had to change jobs. So I ended up getting a job on Catalina Island as a garbage man. And it was one of the better jobs I've had. You got to go fishing in the afternoon still and clean up garbage on the beach before. It was fun. Got lonely and saw in my life, I felt like God kept pulling me back to like, I have a purpose for you, and it's not on this lonely island. And it was a lonely place. It was a beautiful place, but it was lonely, and I felt like purpose was pulling at me. And ended up back here in Georgia and started work at a body shop when I got back with my brother. And from there, I just started kind of learning about polishing and paints and stuff like that. That's kind of what started my extreme interest in it. I had interest in it before, but this is like putting meat on the bones of knowledge as far as how to do it and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Well, even before that, did you have any support system when you were out in California or traveling all over the place?
No, not really. In fact, my dad was pretty against me going out there. But I remember actually I was reading through this book called The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren, and it was like when it came out, it was super popular and stuff, but it was so simple to me, and I didn't have a full grasp on my identity and what I meant to God and how the relationship between God and I worked. I knew I needed forgiveness, but I didn't realize what I meant or what was capable and what could be healed through relationship with him at that point. And I did have it was a tether of God just pulling me back again and again. And there was plenty of mess to get into, but God kept me from it. Took my desire away a lot of times to go any further down any different roads, and just had favor over and over again. I guess the next couple of years it kind of worked once I got back to Georgia, and started going to a local church and learning more and more, like having more foundational stuff. And, I remember like believing the right thing when I was a kid. And then more stuff got connected to that of, hey, this is what God has for me as a believer, and I don't have to struggle with this and this and this. I can surrender it, and I'm fine. And more than fine, like thriving. And met my wife, Sarah, when I was at the lake one day, and I was working for the body shop at that point. And I met her, didn't get her number. I knew I was going to marry her.
She know this?
She didn't know at the time. I knew, but like I was like, we were playing like that game, or the card game Spoons, and I remember like taking a picture of the floor, but like, I'm going to remember this. I'm going to keep this picture, and because it's important. Like this is an important moment. I didn't get her number though. I was kind of like, I'm cool, So anyway, mostly nervous and didn't know how to do it. But anyway, like a month later, I ended up just showing up at her bank because I knew that she worked at Wachovia before it was Wells Fargo. And anyway, she said, hey, I wish to hang out. And I was like, yeah, let's hang out. And we literally didn't, I think it was one day we didn't see each other until we got married. And it was like, timeline, I think it was 2 months of dating, 6 months of engagement, and then we got married. Wow. So 8 months since, pretty much, maybe 9 months since we met. And then, it took a month to figure out how to get her a bank. But anyway, 2 months after that, I kind of skipped a thing there. But it's basically when we were dating, it was just before we were married, a couple months before we were going to get married. My aunt and my grandmother come into my work at the body shop, and they said, hey, your dad just got in a car wreck, and he was killed. And we were...
Where is he living at this point?
Shocked. It was north Murrayville, so just above Dahlonega, essentially. And he died instantly. He had his brother-in-law at the time. He had been remarried, so he had his brother-in-law with him in the car. He had a cut in his head. He was fine, but the pretty grisly scene. And I remember having an understanding, even the day before. I had it was almost like a premonition, almost a visual of a scenario to soften the blow. And I just thought to myself, I'm like, okay, God he's fulfilled his purpose as far as God is concerned. And it was time for him to leave this earth, kind of deal. So it was very heartbreaking for me and my 3 brothers and our family. And so that was in January before we got married.
Did you mend a relationship with him prior to this?
I wouldn't say mended, but I remember the last time I saw him was probably 3 weeks before that. It was early January. And we were kind of still at odds about the thing because he had actually changed into another religion. It's more of a New Age type, Christ consciousness type religion. But I remember giving him a hug and going to pull away a little bit, and then he pulled me back in. And in my mind, and I'm sure in his too, that we both loved each other. We were separated by our belief systems, essentially. But I knew my dad loved me. He was a broken guy as I am. We're not perfect, and I know that he did probably his best he could to raise us. And just, probably deceived would be the best word to describe as what I understood my dad to be there. But I knew he loved me, and just a couple weeks later we got that information, and it's heartbreaking. Because my younger brothers were still young and still getting raised, and they didn't have a dad anymore. And our mom lived in Texas, so we didn't have tons of conversation or contact with her. So it was a rough time. Very sad.
So you have someone pulled away, but you also have someone that came into your life.
Yeah.
Is that tough?
Yeah, I feel like it was
a little easier.
Yeah, and you know what? My wife's family is very, very loving to me as well. I mean, they invited me right in. No family could have been more caring towards someone who wasn't their own offspring. I honestly was calling, when we were engaged, I was already calling them mom and dad kind of deal. We just kind of forewent the formality of, the whole marriage thing as far as what I called them. So Sarah's dad specifically has told me, he's proud of me several times. So it means a lot when you have affirmation of your father, whether it's wired into a young man that you need to be affirmed. And that comes from our eternal wiring. Like, we need to know that we're affirmed by God, and we look for that in human form a lot. And it does help to have that mirrored properly, which is another motivation for me to give my kids their proper identity. And whether I mess up or not, they need to know that God's affirmed them. God loves them. He's given them salvation through Jesus. And that's been the most important stream of thought and information or belief that I've ever had, and that holds everything together for me. Because otherwise I would be useless, probably on the street somewhere, if I would have just taken to heart all the things that I look at and leave and like, hey, I'm going to subscribe to that identity because my dad did this, or somebody told me this one time. And, growing up, essentially a racist, like, nobody likes a racist. And even in podunk town in Texas, like, I was not treated kindly. And, you had to be tough, but you had to be really tough if you believe that way. So it gave me thick skin, but it also gave me some grit to kind of pursue through tough times. So, but yeah, since we were married a couple of years before I started the business, but God has been good. We've been married, I'd like to think 15 years now, but...
Do you want to get confirmation?
Yeah, I'd call out to my wife. She might be out there, but yeah, it's been wonderful. Yeah.
And you got 3 beautiful kids too, and obviously a beautiful home, and everything seemed not like it never seemed to work out, but again, against all the odds, and they had this beautiful wife and kids, and basically living the dream of what any man or woman wants in life, and to have the faith that's guiding you along that way too. It's powerful.
Yeah,
super powerful.
Yeah.
So getting into, was it difficult when you had your kids, knowing how you kind of had that shift in life at a younger age? Was it difficult having those kids at first, being like, what, do I put belief into their lives? Do I kind of hold back?
Yeah, I would say that there was never a moment from the surprise 2 months after we got married that we found out we were pregnant with my first, that there was no doubt in my mind that that truth, biblical truth, had to be deeply embedded in all of them.
Yeah.
So I'd never doubt once to engage that and train them up in that. So it's that'll always, God willing, be the tether in their lives, as it was in mine, whether I knew it or not at times, honestly. So yeah, that's definitely a foundational thing for us.
Well, thanks for sharing all that.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So getting into the work life too, because you've been around for, in this industry for a long time, which is against, what most industry have. It's very difficult to last a couple of years, let alone year 14 for you now? So that's around 12, 14?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what has been, kind of where did it start and how has it gotten to where it is today? But where was it, those first couple of months when you kind of jumped into the detailing industry? Yeah,
so first couple of months they had closed the location that I was working at.
In the body shop?
In the body shop. Yeah, I was the estimator, and I just thought long and hard, and I had a buddy who ran a pressure washing business, but I always knew I liked detailing. I always liked polishing. In fact, that was one of the first things I ever did for Sarah was buffer car, So I've always loved it, and I learned more and more. So I hit it, learned as much as I possibly could online, but also had some various connections with people in the area. Started doing some high-end detailing stuff, but I found that there's not high-end detailing in abundance everywhere. So I started making do where I could and doing parking lot washes. Started out of the Integra and ended up getting blessed.
How the heck do you fit everything in an Integra?
I don't know either. It's just, who knows? God was so faithful to us, and we did loan some money or something. It was $1,000 for a trailer and a generator or something like that. And
you had a trailer behind an Integra?
No, we ended up getting a little pickup truck. I paid $1,000 for it, so I was all in for $2,500. Got a rig and just trying to make it. And I remember being thankful for work, but I couldn't fill up my tank all the way. I literally had to put $15 in because we had to make the ends meet. And then it was when detailing wasn't cool. There were some guys doing some cool stuff out there, but to get in that niche market right off the bat, unless you know more people than I did. It was really hard. So just ground. And the favor we've been given in the industry now with ceramic coatings coming along and being able to add different services, and then, the graciousness of people over the years of trusting me with their vehicles. And we've grown from a one-man show for a very long time to, we have a crew now. And it's unbelievable looking back. I lived in a trailer. We had a house that was like, 2 bedrooms and 4 boys and 2 parents, and it was tiny little meager means, and just blessed beyond measure. Blessed beyond measure now, for sure. Wow. So, yeah.
Well, when was it that you decided to take the business? Because you were now married, had your first child, started detailing, had 2 more kids, still by yourself. Yeah. Right.
Occasional help here and there,
but
not anybody full time, really.
So. Yeah. So what was? I mean, that's a lot of pressure to put on one person.
Yeah.
So when was the decision to? After how many years were you like, okay, I need to start?
Yeah. So when I first got my shop, it was what it changed everything. Not having to spend 3-4 hours a day on the road changed everything. Having just and I still kept the mobile going.
And how far into the business was this?
Oh man, 5 years ago.
So you're good. 8-10 years in.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I was not as far along as I probably should have been, but it was a different time back then. I didn't know as much about business, for one thing, but also like the industry was still kind of a fledgling as far as the coatings would change everything. When coatings started coming out, that's when I really got a spot and focused on like working out of a shop and feeling confident enough to put a coating on, because I knew how to polish and make people happy and engage with people. I just needed to add some services that were, wanted. So that's when everything changed, and got to where I was like, hey, I'm spending a lot of time on the phone, and I don't have a lot of time to look at stuff and get the work done. I may need a little help, and then hired somebody. And I remember the first guy that worked with me, he kind of split his time between we do a little bit of pressure washing, but also do we also do some, tons of detailing out of the shop and stuff. So we kind of filled in the gaps with what we could. I may have even painted a house or 2 back in the day. So it grew from there. As work grew, more people got added, and we still had that focus on we got to do a good job. So that has been our tether as far as business aspects go, is to make sure we're doing a good job. If somebody didn't want to do one or put in that time, and it's like, okay, well, we'll kindly part ways. But we've only been through like a couple guys that are a little painful to let go, but mostly have good relationship with those guys that kind of gone through the shops over the years.
So what would it be if you were to say, looking over the 14 years up until maybe even the last 5 years, but over the 14 years, what were a few of the things that you really strive for that proved success for you and that kept you going along the way?
Yeah, I think taking the time to help people understanding a concept. Because, hey, micro-marring for somebody, like what's paint correction, what's all this? And we're still explaining this daily to people. Yeah. What does film do? What does coating do? What does all this? Just taking the time and just treating the people like they're a friend in the making. And honestly, just cherishing the relationship along the way. Because it could be a guy with a Honda, it could be, a guy with a McLaren. You got to treat them with the same level and give them what they want, and don't try to, oversell. Just be willing to explain to people, and people appreciate honesty. I found, especially the customers that are going to be the best for you are going to be the ones that appreciate what you appreciate. So I love the customers that take 2 hours to wash their car. They're out there, but we can engage with people like that. That's one of the things you could lose sight of if you're doing a massive amount of cars. People not caring about their stuff. I don't know that we're going to be the right fit for them. So that was a main tether is our quality, and then engaging with the customer, and now order of things, because I am a bit of a scatterbrained. But it's
me too.
Yeah, you just need tethers of organization, and God's been great to send us guys that can help out Phil and Ian and stuff as far as SOP and whatnot. It's been they've been invaluable to have. So
Phenomenal. And what were some of the struggles too? Because I'm sure there's some struggles that you had to overcome.
Saying no was hard for me. I'm a people pleaser for sure, and saying no to stuff that wasn't profitable or good for me or them or anything else. I'd sometimes let people talk me into things that wasn't going to be a good outcome. And learning how to say no is one of the most important things that I've learned. And listen to my wife. Always say yes.
That's right.
So, right.
Smart man. Seems like you learned well.
Yeah. So.
Well, I don't have, obviously I don't have kids yet, but I can only imagine what it's like to build something now, especially with having kids that are competent enough to know that dad's going to work and to watch it. So what's it like waking up every day and being able to come home to 3 kids and have something incredible that you're building there, and obviously raising something that's beautiful as well?
Yeah. Well, I tell Sarah this fairly often. Where we live very rich lives. It's a rich time for us. I get to take the kids to school sometimes, and we get to pick them up, and we get to hang out, and we have a great time together. Like, people talk about teenagers and how they're terrors. I'm like, my teenager's the best. She's goofy like me. We get along, and all my kids are special in their own way. Genevieve, my middle child, she's smart as a whip, and you've got to connect in different levels with your kids, and Wiggles is a boy, or William, sorry, Wiggles, I'm a 9-year-old.
Wiggles is the best name.
Yeah, he's a little tiger, and so all of them, you have to appreciate your kids individually. You've got to, or you're going to. If you have them, you can't just lump them all like all my kids. They're vastly different, and they're all little treasures, and you got to treasure every moment with them for sure. So. Yeah.
Well, legacy is a big part of what we do here at You're Able, and with Your Stories, and you've built something incredible over the last 14 years, but what's kind of the legacy you want to leave behind for your kids?
Yeah, so, as far as like retirement and beyond the golden years of stuff, I don't fully know. Lord knows what will happen next. I may sell one day, I may not, I may just work until I can't walk anymore, but as long as my kids know that they're loved, and that I've done my best to provide, and love my wife and honor her. That's the 3 things that I want to hold on to. If you're doing all the other stuff right, if your relationship's right with God and your wife and your kids, and you have the proper order of things, the business not necessarily will take care of itself, but it will be in a healthy enough spot for long time sustainment, in my opinion. So. You do have to have that focus, and you've got to further your education on different things and listen to wisdom, and have mentors and stuff. But you've got to have your priorities in line. If you get them backwards, you're sunk. You're going to burn out. And I've been close where I've been to where I'm beat. I've been working too hard, but it's like, hey, what do I have to show for that? And I'm like, I've got a couple more bucks in the bank, but man, I'm tired. And like, so is everybody else around me. So I'm like, hey, pull it back. Let's be reasonable.
Love it, dude.
Yeah.
Well, Evan, I think it's safe to say that all the odds, from like I said, from a doctor standpoint, would have said that all the odds were against you, but you've proven the odds multiple times in your life to be for you. And I love that about your story. And I love that about you. And you're probably one of the most happy people. I mean, every time I'm with you, I just smile. And I get to have a great talk no matter what mood I'm in. You always put me in my very happy mood. It's like I'm going to Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah. Give me some cheese pizza and some tokens.
That's right, man.
That's how I feel with you. So thank you, bro. And thank you for opening up your house and introducing us to your family and your whole team. Thank you so much.
Sure, man.
That's Evan's story. Make sure you go like, subscribe, share all these videos. Thank you so much to the Avens, everyone at You're Able, Cinescope, for putting this together. If you guys have any questions, please reach out. Sign up for the free 30-day trial. And as always, keep shining. Cheers, bro.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks.